I just saw some information recently that the U.S. equities are, more overvalued relative to almost any metric you want to look at than other countries. That a lot of the other lesser developed countries seem to have much more reasonably priced equities relative to their earnings and so forth and GDP and all that. But anyway, what are your thoughts about the equity markets, or take it wherever you want, whatever you want to talk about first?
Well, I know there's a lot of fundamental metrics that argue what you just said, but the U.S. market is definitely overvalued by this metric or that metric, and I agree. From a technical perspective, especially measuring the long-term momentum of the market, we've described it as the biggest bubble ever in U.S. stock market history. And big bubbles break, okay, period, exclamation point. We think the Fed, which created the bubble, will also break the bubble, and they're probably on course to do that over since June, when they started talking about tapering and now rate increases. And so their favorite markets that they supported and outright bought over the last year and a half, up to summer of this year anyway, like muni bond futures, muni bond ETFs, high yield corporate debt ETFs. They literally bought these things outright to support them. And now they've ceased, and these markets are now taking out the lows of the last year and a half, the muni bonds, for example, whereas the S&P is just coming off its high. We think that the stock market, what we primarily focus on, aside from a few key stocks, Microsoft, Amazon, and Apple, we think as those three go, the world goes. Okay, but we also look at the S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100, and they're fracturing certain levels. We won't put up the full red light yet, but they're definitely dancing on top of glass, and it looks like they're ready to go through it. We don't think there's going to be a crash-like event like we had in early 2020, where we dropped 35% in 3 weeks, and our definition of a crash is about that. That's what happened in 29, that's what happened in 87. It was of the 35% dimension in weeks. What we're looking for is a major top signaled, and we have our numbers very specific, and they're not far below. And if they're triggered, we think we'll have the onset probably of a first drop being of the dimension of, maybe 20%.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information, and it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
And it's an idiot number, because so many people believe in that issue of, well, if it's more than 20%, it's a bear market. It's so silly. I don't know where they come up with that number. But anyway, but it happens to be that we think that the first bounce point is about 20% below here. Now, if that occurred, of course, extreme doubt would sweep the markets. A lot of asset managers who've been very doubtful, like Ray Dalios of the world and so forth, will say, I told you. Okay, and a lot of the younger asset managers who were, all glib and happy will suddenly get some sense of reality. And the Fed will get a sense of reality. So this notion of we're going to raise rates. Well, look what's happened just over the last, let's say, several weeks. They're going to raise rates, right? Okay. So what's happened? The Bloomberg Commodity Index from the December low about 4 weeks ago has rallied over 10%.
Wow.
Okay. So it's not intimidated by the Fed. Okay. Meanwhile, the NASDAQ 100 has dropped almost that much since the high of 3 weeks ago. So which market is most vulnerable to the Fed wanting to, quote, stop inflation? They've never wanted to really stop inflation, because if you look at the history of it, since 2008 and 9, when they went into the QE stuff, they inflated. And the inflation went into an area that was okay for them, stock market, muni bonds, junk debt, and so forth. That was acceptable, quote, inflation. But then when the commodities start to turn up, after being smashed for, since the 2011 highs, Bloomberg Commodity Index was up at 180 something. It dropped to about 50. Right now it's only at 104, so it's hardly, it's not even back to the 2011 highs, and yet they want to smash it. Well, the problem is what they're going to smash is their own bubble. And I think gold knows that. And it knows that ultimately the central banks of the Western world, including Japan, ECB, BOJ, and the Fed, will at some point have to give up any notion of fighting inflation in the manner in which they're talking about, because it's going to destroy their bubbles. And we definitely have the biggest bubble. Now, if they have to reverse course, what's gold going to do?
Oh, my goodness.
They're going to go back to monetary stimulus again, which is what they do. That's what the Fed has done for over 100 years. The only issue is the rate at which they do it. So we live in an interesting time, and I think you've got to watch that stock market, because I think the Fed will, at some point, suddenly realize, we've got to come up with some new terminology.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address, because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.